Hello.
Okay, go ahead.
Everyone hear me? Be heard? Great. I'll call us to order, beginning with the folks in person and then moving on Zoom. Myself, I'm present. I will give us a few announcements before we get started. Bernie,
Present.
can we hear on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So when the folks in the room speak, you want to use this. And you want to make sure your green light is on when you speak so that folks at home can hear.
Perfect. Andy,
Present.
Meg,
Present.
Marcus,
Present.
Raphael,
Here.
and Erica.
Here.
Excellent. Ken will be joining us at 8 o'clock. In person, and Meg and Erica are going to give 7-minute presentations. I got the final report, so I appreciate that, Bernie. And Erica, you had 2 questions via email that I'm just getting to now. But it looks like Meg answered one of them. Yeah, Ken and Meg answered your question. All right. I apologize. I have not been active on email today, so thus you weren't able to get a response before this meeting. But if you have further questions after this meeting, send me another email and I will get back to you tomorrow. So I will now get us officially started with the public forum to waste no time. We don't have any attendees in person. We have 6 attendees online. I will start screen sharing the preliminary report. I just want to confirm. Folks can see that all right?
Yes.
Excellent. And then once we get to the recommendations themselves, I will turn it over to Meg and Erica for the addendum and recommendations, and we will go from there. There's another slideshow that I'll switch over to screen sharing at that point. So welcome, everyone. Just some general information here. This is just our table of contents. There are memos attached, and the preliminary report is found on the town website for folks on Zoom. We'll move us right along. General information. So we're required to do a review every 10 years, but it was worded to be every year ending in 4. So in 2024, which is when we got started, that is where we're at. In terms of the first review, even though it was 6 years, we start in 2024, and then in 2034, there will be another review. Our committee charge, we were charged with studying the charter, collecting public input on improvements, and then producing 3 reports to the town council. We are currently finishing up. We're doing the public forum on the preliminary report, and we're starting the final report. Currently, we've had 2 extensions. There's 9 members who are chosen by the town council. 1 resigned early in the process, and the seat they decided not to fill last night. The council is going to have to vote on our recommendations within 90 days of the final report, which we're going to submit on January 5th and be present at their meeting on the 5th at 6:30, as well as on the 12th. We've met 33 times since our first meeting in September of 2024. And we've had a variety of means of collecting input, which I will be the first to admit have not been seamless. However, we have had a website, public comments at the meetings, email submissions. We hosted, I believe, 4 or 5 public listening sessions at various places across town and on Zoom. We've had an open question survey of elected officials and town staff, which actually got a pretty good response. And we do have all our input posted on the committee webpage for folks to see. And then we have this public forum happening now. The Collins Center for Public Management, we entered a contract with them to provide consultation and points of comparison and all at the committee's request, basically. So next slide. Committee scope. So making changes to the charter. Some changes can be made by a simple council vote. Some would require state legislative action, known as a special act, which would have to pass the House and Senate. And then others would require a new elected charter commission to be formed, as had been done to create this charter originally, had been done multiple times, with results ratified by a townwide vote. So we decided from the get-go not to limit input only to those changes that can be approved from the town council. Our process was open to including a broader range of feedback, including stuff that would require a special act and a new charter commission and townwide vote. The charter specific recommendations for the town council action listed in section 2 and 3. We've had a table comparison with the original language. I'm sure folks can see that in both the initial and preliminary report and how it's been whittled down. And then we've also had broader structural changes and public engagement issues that we intentionally included in the addendum of the report to cover a lot of what we heard that can't be done by a council vote, but is still very valid feedback. So I will move us along to the specific recommendations that we have made. There's only 18 of them. And I will pass it along for a quick 7-minute discussion of these. I started the meeting at 7, so I made my time 7 minutes, and it would be great if folks can follow just out of respect for the public.
Push this down to speak.
Yes. You have to hold it. Yeah, that's because this seat is different.
Thank you so much. As Julian said, our charge was to look at the charter, but because we received so many suggestions that were outside of the charter, we have 2 sections to our report. I'm going to report on the 18 recommendations we're making deal directly with the charter. There were 18 changes that represented hundreds of comments that we got, input. We discussed them, we grouped them into categories, and we voted on them. The proposals that we're making represent a majority, although because we were 8, we counted 4 as adequate to be included. And you might be interested down the road to see what the votes were. Some people wanted more participation and more engagement. Other people wanted more efficiency. So I think the recommendations combine those things. We have made an effort also because of our committee goes out of business on January 5th to propose the recommendations in a form that would be easy to implement, because we won't be there to pressure the council to make these things actually happen. And I think it's something, I'll just say, that everybody who cares about these improvements should be paying attention to, is making sure that they're implemented, because if they aren't, they aren't. So let's look at the first one. I'm going to quickly go through 18 of them. I don't know how to change the screen. So the first one is about public forums. It seeks to make the public forums more flexible, less rigid, and to improve participation and communication between the public and the council. And because I only have 7 minutes, I'll go to 2. 2 is also about the, oh, you're not showing the larger, okay, 2 is a.
Sorry, the other slideshow will be shared when we do the specific discussion on the recommendations. This is just the overview.
Okay, so the second one clears up the confusion about multiple member bodies and makes it less cumbersome. The third one is a proposal that would simplify the complicated system of voting that the council does. We got a lot of feedback on that one. Number 4 will proposes creating term limits for the council president. because some people believe that that would encourage new leadership and diverse participation. 5, expands who can run for the town council. For example, somebody who works in the summer as a summer employee, technically as a town employee and would be disqualified. We propose changing that. It would be aligned with the way the school committee and the library work, where people who work for those institutions can run for leadership. 5 is expanding, I did that. 6, to fix the unnecessary complexity of how the council votes on different kinds of measures. It's confusing and difficult. 7 would guarantee public comment at all meetings and encourage more than one public comment so that people can speak when an item comes up in a meeting, an agenda item about which they have information or perhaps even expertise. 8 would increase resident participation and allow the appointment of people with relevant experience and knowledge to related to particular committees' work to help those committees, because if the committees are only council members, they may be limited in what they're capable of doing because of the experience and knowledge of those counselors. 9 is an effort in order to increase communication between the council and residents. 10, some have argued successfully that occasionally the council should have access to a second legal opinion, because often we know, and all of us in our experience have sought a second opinion when something's controversial, and we're recommending that that be available to the council. 11 guarantees both public input and councilor reflection, getting rid of the ambiguity. 12 would end the ability of one counselor to abruptly end discussion, 1 or 2. It can be a device for manipulating the group when perhaps the group was almost ready to make a decision. 11 defines and improves the public forum method. 14 requires the town manager to have more responsibility for improving the quality of public input and communication. We've had a lot of comments on this topic. For 15, ditto improve the quality of public input in the school committee meetings. 16, there's a huge amount of support for this one. Require resident members in the finance committee, particularly in order to have participation of different points of view and people who have financial experience. 17 would allow the town to have more quality and not risk losing a strong candidate. So if somebody applies for a job and you really want this person and somebody else is trying to hire them, and you have to wait a period of time, you can lose that person. And 18 would strengthen the ability of voters to veto an action, a referendum. It increases the time. I mean, 14 days is hardly enough time to even get it together. In addition, though, we received a huge amount of feedback related to other things not specifically in the charter, some larger, as Julian said, that would require a new charter commission, for example, and some lesser, for example, dealing with rules and how things are done, how people act at meetings and so on. And those are in a separate section of the report that Erica is going to report on. We call it the addendum, because it's not the core of what we're doing, but we've had many discussions about this and repeatedly agreed that it was important to report on these topics because they were mentioned so much in the input that we got from residents. If we hadn't included them, it would have been like we weren't listening. Over to you, Erica.
Go ahead, Erica. Thanks.
Thank you, Meg. Like Meg was saying, we received a number of comments and suggestions and recommendations that fall outside of the scope of the Charter Review Committee to recommend, because they would require a state action or a new charter commission. However, we really value all of the input that we got, and these kinds of comments showed up in multiple ways in almost every format of feedback that we solicited. So they're listed in this report in the addendum, not because they're secondary in importance, but because we really want to highlight the public sentiment that we are hearing, that some suggestions, ideas for improving Amherst Town government fall outside of the legal and structural language of a charter, and that they have an incredible value that we want to convey to the council in the strongest possible sense to please respond to in conjunction with this charter-specific recommendations. So we divided the addendum so far, and just to be clear, it's not we still have a final report version of the addendum that will expand slightly. But we've divided the addendum so far into two main sections. One is about structural issues and one is grouped together under public engagement issues. So on this slide, you see a series of structural issues that we received as comments and feedback from, again, a variety of sources. Just to quickly review, changing the form of government either to a mayor council form of government or returning to a town meeting form of government is of a large enough scope that it would require a new charter commission. And so these are included in the addendum. We heard them in multiple ways with multiple levels of enthusiasm and emphasis. And so we included them here because I think it's important as a document of what public sentiment is. Some people suggested that we revisit the size of the council. And this note about 7 or 9 counselors is more typical as a point of comparison to other towns like Amherst. The idea of lengthening or staggering terms for elected office, there are advantages and disadvantages to opting into something like that, all of which would be mandated by state law. So that would require a different kind of approach as opposed to a simple up or down vote by council, which is what some of the 18 recommendations could be, how they could be responded to. Allowing the council to increase line items without increasing the total budget, changing the configuration of the constitution of these various boards and committees. Some of those parameters are governed by things outside the charter. And a suggestion to do a comprehensive review of resident boards and committees and their role, meaning a kind of broader view of how committees and council and boards interact with each other that could be reconfigured by a different approach than an up or down vote on the charter item. Could I have the next slide? Thank you. This is a second kind of grouping of items that have to do with not so much structural issues to the basic sort of parts of government, but about kind of good government practices. And these group together issues of transparency, issues of access to information, and government responsiveness. And so we heard a lot of feedback about this in many different forms. And we felt like these sort of represent people's lived experience of their government, as opposed to some of the things that are charter specific, which are slightly more mechanical in nature. Revising some of the article language is different than asking government to be more responsive in a variety of ways. And so what you have here is a grouping of public desire, public kind of sense of urgency for town government to more fully live up to some basic democratic values. And again, trying to emphasize the need for a council response to all of these issues as much as the charter specific recommendations. I won't go through these one by one because I'm certain I'm running out of time, but some of these things, the most important, or that we'll emphasize right now, a clearer communication about the variety of ways that residents can participate in the town's governance and weigh in on government decisions. And it has to do with also the timing, opportunities for participation, when is the best time or best method for what kind of response, revisiting the practice of public comment in council and committee meetings. This is the most sort of live and real-time way that the public gives feedback to council and committees, and there is a lot of dissatisfaction with how it's currently practiced. And so this is just a bullet point, but in the actual addendum, there's an expanded version of this set of suggestions and what people feel would make an improved experience. Suggestions for educating the public on what it actually takes to run the town, requests for greater level of detail in budget documents, requests for an an improved ability to locate and access information on the town website is a pretty common refrain that we hear and that frankly we experience sometimes as committee members. And there's, again, expanded language about that in the addendum itself. The frequency and notification about district meetings, again, this is a real-time, high-contact way to improve people's experience of the responsiveness of government, knowing when those meetings are happening, knowing that they're happening with a kind of regularity or a certain cadence. More robust community participation officer. This is something that appears in the charter, but is not being fully lived up to. Again, we've written a little bit about that in the addendum. Forming a committee to study regionalization opportunities, something that is mentioned by a lot of people, but not maybe fully lived out. And here's another section that another item that is mentioned in the charter, but is not has not been fully acted on as it might have been expected when it was put in. A series of items like ranked choice voting, participatory budgeting, etc. So these are some of the items that are in the addendum. There will be another round or another pass at this. And so part of what we're doing here is airing what we've collected so far. And there's an additional opportunity for people to give feedback either tonight or through our public input forum on the website to add to this or catch anything that you feel could have been missed.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Erica. This is just our last slide. I believe I covered most of this and Erica helped a little with this last slide, but we have our public forum now. And the final report, I already spoke to that, as well as the January 12th, we'll have a council vote for referral. And we've gotten consultant assistance from Patricia Lloyd and Anthony Wilson from the Collins Center. And we've gotten help from Athena, who is here right now and has been here through all our meetings, helping us out, and Samantha Giffen, who is our new communications manager. So we thank them all for their contributions to the process. With that, I will stop screen sharing. And since we don't have any attendees in person, I do see 10 attendees online. So how we're going to go about this is we will have a specific time starting at probably 7:45 or 8 o'clock, which will allow 30 minutes to discuss the recommendations in more of a roundtable format with the committee members and get questions answered and that sort of thing. And then at like 8:30, we'll switch and have the same thing happen with the addendum where we'll allow folks in the public to go back and forth with each other and with members of the committee to discuss this a little more and sort of dive into questions and comments and that sort of thing. But first, I just wanted to open it up for general public comment.
A point of order.
Yes.
The definition of a public forum is that more than one half of the meeting time is devoted to public comment. So we just need to keep track that we have public comment
Okay.
for at least 24 minutes
Perfect.
so far. And if
Um,
there's committee discussion included in this meeting, we need to factor that into the time because
Okay.
at least half needs to be public comment.
Got it. Thank you. We will now allow folks to comment for the next 30 minutes, 35 minutes. So raise your hand on Zoom or press *9 if you're on a telephone, and we will let you speak without us interrupting and talking back and forth. And then once we meet the time limit, you can ask questions and we can go back and forth more. Okay. I only see one hand so far. Oh, now I see two. So 3. Keep raising your hands, folks. You have plenty of time, as we just learned. So I'm not going to limit how much time you have, given how many people are here. Just be respectful of the audience, and other folks who want to comment. But if you have 5 minutes worth of stuff to say, I'm not going to stop you. Nina, go right ahead.
Hi there. Thank
Hi.
you so much for all your work and for this wonderful report. My biggest concerns entering into this process had to do with one, scheduling, so that because I'm really wanting to see better collaboration between the town council and the school committee, and some of what makes that difficult is the way that budgets are submitted and the timing of that, and the other has to do with transparency, and that's also about budgets and about when budgets are submitted and in what form they're submitted, and having a calendar. Both of these are sort of calendrical issues. In your report, there's nothing that specifically addresses those things. Is that because, well, I could just ask you, I'm assuming that's because it's not within your purview, but I would love some explanation about why that is. For example, in section 5, there's seems like there's plenty of places to be able to say, instead of at the most convenient moment or under a certain, within a reasonable time frame, to actually create time frames, and to mandate those time frames, at least as a document. There are things mandated in the charter as it is that we don't do, obviously. So to whatever degree we can, I'd love to know why those things weren't addressed and if that had to do with your purview.
Thank you, Nina. That's an excellent comment. We will go back and address that question, but we need to first let folks speak. So, Josana, is that how you say your name? Go right ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi. Yes.
Hi, Josna Reggae. Thank you very much for all the work you've done. So I'm a new member of the Amherst League of Women Voters, and I was privileged to attend the sessions where the League's review of the Charter was presented, amended, and voted on, all in time to be presented to the Charter Review Committee when it was first formed. The League polled hundreds of residents, and the chief concerns that emerged, which I'm sure you all know, related to transparency in decision-making, public access to information, ease and encouragement of public participation, the town budget process, and checks and balances between the executive and legislative branches. So I've been following some of the CRC's deliberations. I've read the preliminary report, and today I was just comparing it with the League's recommendations and my own. So I'd like your final report, if it's at all possible, to consider the League's excellent recommendation that we add a brief preamble to the Charter, outlining the town's goals for good government and including a mission and values statement. Maybe this can only be done, by the council next year after you've disbanded, but I would like to see that in the Charter and not wait for another 10 years before we put it in. I feel strongly like the League, the town should develop and agree on our own principles of good government to guide us. A few of the points I want to make are mentioned in the addendum, but I wanted to bring them up front, as it were. I also want to underscore the point that the committee has made that placing them in the addendum shouldn't diminish their importance and mean that we have to wait for another 10 years before we can address them. So just regarding now Article 2, Legislative Branch, I agree with most of the recommendations. But in addition, I'd like to see provisions for not just hybrid, but also fully remote meetings under certain conditions, such as a pandemic or extreme weather. That the council clerk or president to notify the viewing public at the beginning of the meeting, as you did, as to how many people are present in person and how many are present remotely. For the resident representatives on all council committees to be able to speak. For the period between the election and inauguration of councillors to be shortened. For terms for elected offices to be staggered, so that the whole council isn't being voted on every 2 years. And for each town councillor to have an equal opportunity to serve on standing council committees. With regard to Article 3, the executive branch, I agree that the charter should delineate more clearly the powers of the town manager. More specifically, as I think the League recommended, the council should have a greater ability to check the town manager via the current goal-setting, evaluation, and contract processes. I agree that applications for seats on town committees and boards that are overseen by the town manager should be public records as long as the applicant consents. But further, I feel strongly that the manager should acknowledge receipt and inform members of the status of their applications, that the manager should not always have the final word on appointment or non-appointment to committees, and the council should consider making positions on some committees elected ones. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have one attendee in person who would like to make comment.
Excellent.
Andy Anderson, come on up.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Andy Anderson, District 5. I have to say that I am flabbergasted that you are essentially ignoring one of the most important items that remains to be implemented from the new charter. The entire voting structure of the town council is based on the assumption that ranked choice voting would be used. And you think that it's just a, quote, suggestion rather than a requirement that we implement it. Yes, you literally wrote that it's just only a suggestion. I find that incredible. The town's failure to implement ranked choice voting is a big problem, and you have the opportunity to fix it by recommending to the council that they implement it as an amendment to the charter. You claim that it, quote, falls outside simple or technical changes to the language of the charter, when in fact the text is all ready to go. Just a few changes to fit it in due to the excellent work of the Ranked Choice Voting Commission 5 years ago. Yes, 5 years ago, and it's still not in place. The council just has to approve it by putting it on the next election ballot with a 2/3 vote, and then the voters approve it. Simple, very simple. You instead recommended, quote, continued advocacy, presumably by continuing to appeal to the legislature to pass the town's home rule petition. This is a ridiculous hope against hope. Given that the legislature is now in its 3rd session without approving our petition, no guarantee it's going to happen this time either. The leadership will squash it just like they have the last 2 times. This demonstrates how little they think of the town and its people. And we have to take things into our own hands. I will reiterate that you have the opportunity to fix this problem quickly and easily. The use of ranked choice voting was approved by the voters 8 years ago as part of the charter and has been a slow boat ever since. I urge you to finally finish this off with a recommendation to the council to amend the charter with this already approved language. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Ronnie Parker?
Hi, this is Ronnie Parker. So I actually don't understand a lot of the complexities between the language, in the language that you've just presented. So I'm just going to say the one thing that's really important to me that I don't think I saw there. One, this has to do with participation in our public meetings, the town council meetings and other meetings. We really, when someone like me comes to speak on to this kind of forum, it's really important to know who else is there or how many people are there, because if I don't know that, it feels very lonely. So if you have to come and express your point of view, it's very discouraging if you don't know whether there are 100 people or 1 person there. So I believe that all these public meetings should just use the default mechanism in Zoom and just let us see how many people are there. Secondly, I think that anyone who speaks must have the right to be seen when they speak. In Southampton, you cannot speak unless you are seen, because they believe that if you're not seen, how do you know who's speaking? And then translation. A whole large segment of our town, of our residents, are not able to participate because they don't understand anything. And I can tell you, even with English, it's hard. So translation is not difficult. The Amherst Mobile Market, which is a small nonprofit, manages to provide simultaneous translation. So it's hard for me to believe that the town of Amherst cannot do that. So those are my most important things. They have to do with all of us being able to participate in town government. And I don't see that explicitly stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, Darcy.
Good evening. Can you hear me? My name's Darcy Dumont. I live in District 3, and I want to thank the other speakers for making their comments. I agree with most all of them. I'm not going to repeat all of the recommendations that I've made in writing. As an individual, as a former counselor, and as a member of the League of Women Voters Task Force, my main question tonight for the group is, after having watched your last meeting, I just am interested to know whether there is the possibility of changing your preliminary report as a result of hearing the input at this public input hearing, because it didn't sound like it at your last meeting. It sounded like you basically don't have enough time to make any more changes. And in fact, you have a draft final report already made. So I would just like to hear you talk about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Darcy. Other comments, questions? Feel free to raise your hand. I don't see any more hands. Athena, should we just be quiet or?
We've run into this situation at council, public forums. Public comment period needs to be at least as long as the presentation. The presentation was 23 minutes. So we need to leave the floor open for public comment until 7:46. And that's assuming that the meeting will be finished at that time. If the committee continues to deliberate, then we need to add more public comment time so that we meet the requirements of the charter.
This is why we edited that's one of the changes we made.
Yes, we did recommend one of those changes. Does anyone else want to? Yes, I just said. Does anyone else want to speak? Darcy, go ahead. Go ahead, Darcy.
Sorry, I just wanted to mention that the general areas that you have in your addendum should probably include a section for transparency. One of the concerns that I think was really pretty overwhelming, that I think you heard a lot about, was the appointments by the town manager to multiple member bodies, and the lack of transparency as far as the council knowing who is in the pool and the diversity of the pool, the mix of people and who they are, their names. So that is something that's done in Northampton. It's transparent. The applications are treated like public records. They are open to the public to view who has applied. And there's no real way that the council can use their check on the town manager without knowing who they're comparing a recommendation for a nomination to. They don't know who they're comparing it to. So I was just surprised that that wasn't included in the addendum in either good government or separately transparency, because transparency is a really big concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. I'm just going to leave the floor open for additional comments for the next 5 minutes. Adrian, did I see your hand for a minute? I'm not getting anything from Adrian, but Nina, go right ahead.
Hi, Nina Mankin again, District 1. I would just be happy to elucidate more on the comment that I made before in terms of sections where it seemed as though there might be the possibility of putting in more explicit material around agendas. So for instance, in 5.2, to explicitly require the budget coordinating group to publish agendas and meeting minutes and meeting materials and their calendar, and to make those meetings open to the public. I think there's been some discussion among the people who I know who are concerned with the same things that I am about trying to create a more functional conversation between the town council and the school committee, the school administration and school committee, that the BCG be used in the way that it had originally been designed to be used, which has not been happening under the current council. And it seemed as though section 5.2 would be a place to elucidate that.
Thank you so much, Nina.
Quick point of information, Nina, the BCG is posted as a public meeting. They're meeting this Thursday at noon.
Thank you, Athena. Other comments? Go right ahead.
I just, I was cutting my remarks so that in case a lot of people were here to speak, but I just wanted to make one more point, Josna here, and that regarding the final report. I don't know if the CRC is already doing this, but I feel that it wouldn't be hard for the final report to include all the comments made by the public organized into the areas of concern and really indicating the areas of concern that were shared by the largest number of townspeople. I think Darcy commented on that, if, out of 700 comments, 400 were on, addressed the subject of transparency, then transparency is a very important concern. So some way to not just say all points of view were presented, but which issues and concerns were of greatest importance to townspeople who participated. Thanks.
Thank you. Adrian, did you have anything? No? Okay. Anita.
Hello, Anita Sarro. District 5. I've been following this process very carefully. And as some of you know, reporting occasionally in the Indy. So I feel like I have a little bit of a stake in the outcome here. And I've been troubled, and it may very well be a part of the larger discussion, but I've been troubled by the lack of interest on the part of most people in town, but also the lack of what I see as the lack of interest on the part of our town government. It took a long time to put the committee together. There was a complete, in my mind, lack of interest in finding a substitute when the individual withdrew. And well, there's not enough people, who have applied, so the pool is too small, which I will never accept as a reasonable reason for not appointing to a vacancy. I think it's far more important to fill a vacancy and have fully functioning committees. But I wanted to emphasize some of the things that Darcy and Rainey and Josna have all touched on, the issue of transparency. Transparency of how we talk to one another, how meetings are run, how these comments are reflected by the people who are charged with making decisions. Nothing is more frustrating than to have a comment that is very well thought through, very well presented, as the comments have been tonight, and then be greeted with, thank you very much for your comment, and never hearing it picked up at any point in the meeting. So I hope that the handful of comments that you've gotten tonight will actually be part of your discussion, especially the issues that Rainey brought out about who else is there, how many are there, or why can't the speakers be seen? There can always be an opt-out provision if someone has some privacy issue, and really translation has to be critical to have full public participation and not us English speakers. And again, the town manager appointments, having been on the short end of the stick twice now, with applications for different committees, it is hardly transparent. We have a town manager who doesn't feel like he has to give anything that approaches an explanation, even to the individual. So I would hope in this final go round that there be not just lip service to all of the comments about transparency, but really digging in. And even in the addendum, if you feel that it's got to go in the addendum, it's just recited in the addendum. There's no meat to it. I don't hear this committee really grappling with the very core issues that people in town have been raising time and again. So I will leave it at that. Thank you. And really, I appreciate all of your work. It's not all grousing, believe me.
Thank you, Anita. Meg?
Hi, I can't tell what's happening.
Sorry, we have a member named Meg Gage, and
Oh,
I
I'm
called
so
on
sorry, Meg
you.
Gage.
But go right ahead.
Uh, everybody started to laugh. I'm Meg Kreplin. I live on Southeast Street, and I just wanted to take a moment to, one, take up a little bit of time so you all could have a chance to respond, because I did hear that as a real problem, like a real problem. And the effort that both it takes to come and talk and sort of the anxiety it produces, as well as the energy it takes to listen and try to synthesize the number of comments and the ways in which the comments were taken in, and how it's never ever enough. I didn't know the fact about ranked choice. I forgot. I knew, and then I forgot. So, participating, brings you back to what you don't even know about your town. So I wanted to mostly appreciate, and sort of what Anita just said at the end, that regardless, this is, I think, and I've talked about this when I've talked about this committee, it's a tribute to democracy, that for better or for worse, everyone, and it's imperfect, is invited to try to comment. And we don't get to do that about our federal government unless we're in the streets. Particularly, we can vote people in or vote people out. So it's kind of an amazing thing to have in a charter, and of course it could be done differently and timing, but we're humans in a tough time, and I appreciate the effort that people take to comment. I appreciate the League of Women Voters and the alignment with much of what it sounds like town folks have said sort of independently, and the effort of the committee to try to make sense of so many words. And so thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't think I've heard such a friendly and positive public comment in a long time, so we must be doing something right, and I appreciate it.
We've heard some.
Other comments? Darcy, I'll let you go one more time.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention on the issue of transparency that that a concern I've had with the committee is that I haven't been able to find any minutes for the entire time you have existed. I know you've had minutes because they've been approved at meetings, but they're not posted. Unless I'm missing something. So if that's something you could answer, that would be great. And I also think that the minutes should reflect who voted for what. So that, I think, is required by the open meeting law. So if you have been doing that, I'm very happy, but I have not been able to find that.
I believe we're not up to date on minutes currently. However, we do approve minutes pretty regularly at our meetings, and I believe they're posted in the packet each time.
They're not posted on the website.
They're in the meeting packet. So if you go,
Yeah,
They're
that's not,
posted in each meeting packet, and if anyone ever needs help finding something on the website, you can contact me. I'm the staff liaison. This is Athena O'Keefe speaking, and Angela Mills is the executive assistant to the town manager. She's also very helpful at finding documents on the website when folks need help.
yeah, there's a link that says meeting minutes and there's nothing there. So just saying.
Thanks, Darcy.
It is someone who just finished the minutes of the last meeting, including the roll call votes. They're there. Meeting book. Link.
so I believe the meeting packet is the correct place to look, but the staff, Athena and Angela, can help you. Adrian, did you have a comment? I saw your hand go up once more. I just wanted to make sure you didn't, if you want to speak, you're welcome to. No? Okay, any other public comments? Last call? Ronnie, go ahead.
Hi. So I just hate to see all this time where we're called to comment, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I have so many comments on this, but your work just seems so complicated, honestly. And I think it was never really clear to me. To me, the charter is like the thing that governs the town. So I assumed I could talk about all the stuff that I would like to see that should be different. And then it seems like a lot of it is sort of out of scope. And now I'm just having trouble with the language and all of that. And, I mean, I think I'm a fluent English speaker. So I'm not sure what you can do at this point, but it's really just, it's been difficult to participate. And I know that, you said, oh, so great to hear something positive. Well, you should also know that when you invite comment about something like this, we're trying to recommend change. So it's not negative when we say we want to see something or why is this not here? It's not negative. It's just public discourse. So I would say too very much that I know how much, I don't know, but I can guess how much work is involved in all that you all have done and certainly appreciate that. But I would like to see a higher level of understanding for the regular person. And I want us to have a higher comfort level with disagreement. So thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. Other comments? Anyone else? I'm just going to leave the floor open for 3 more minutes so we have time. Josna, go ahead.
Hi. I hate a silence. I feel the need to fill it. No, but I just wanted to underscore what Ronnie said about how much of what felt to me to be the most substantive comments on the charter were relegated to the addendum, and that that your comments in your preliminary report on that doesn't mean that they're less important. Just the very fact that they were relegated to an addendum does mean they're less important, and does look like that to the public. So I wish that you had been able to interpret the scope of what your mandate was more broadly to really address the evident concerns of the people in the town. That's all.
Thank you. Other call for comments? Last call. Nina?
I would like to now underscore what Josna just said, and ask, this is related to my initial comment, which was a question, for some clarification on why those elements in the addendum were not more substantively addressed in looking at the charter itself. I assume there's good reason for that, and I'd love to know what it is. And thank you for being so articulate, Josna, on that fact.
Thank you. Thank you for attending. Any other comments online? No. Okay. Any committee responses?
Just a
to-
quick point of order.
yes.
Right now, we have given the public comment 15 more minutes than the committee has taken. So once we go past 15 minutes of committee discussion, then we'll need to reopen for public comment.
Perfect. Excellent. So thank you, Athena. I see no more public comments. Okay, great. I will turn it over to the committee for comments. Just because of the 15-minute limit, I'm going to limit committee members' comments to 3 minutes. Go ahead, Raphael.
It would be great, Julian, if you were clear with like the plan for final report. You mentioned earlier in this process something about the final report. For the public, you should be clear about what we discussed in terms of what role this forum will play in developing the final report and additional comments. Letting folks know it's not a done deal. We made some decisions last time. This is considered as part, the comments made are considered in our final report. So hopefully you can make folks aware of that.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Raphael. And for everyone online, all your comments will be considered in the final report, and we will even, to an extent, consider new items if such are brought forward. And we certainly will be considering some items that we either voted down or didn't pay much attention to in again, now looking at the final report, just noting that, like for example, some of the comments Nina made, I looked back at our original voting, and with Article 5, we did have some suggestions there that weren't voted to be included. We might look at those again, that sort of thing. So thank you for the clarification, Raphael. And
I know you said 3 minutes, but it would also be good for someone here to share the why addendum for the public. I think it's important for people to know.
Great. I just see it looks like we had a few new people in the audience join, or at least maybe one or two more. Before I go to Meg and Erica, does anyone else in the audience have public comment, since I just saw you all join? Raise your hand. No? Okay. Meg and then Erica, if you want to explain that addendum, that would be great.
So I regret that the slides were very spare. A number of things are in the report, like ranked choice voting, as well as participatory budgeting, which is something I worked on. I don't want to, it sounds defensive to say, yeah, but, so I hope people will read. We've all taken notes and listened, I think, carefully. And I'm happy to notice that a number of points, there isn't time to go over them, actually are in the report.
Thanks, Meg. Erica?
Thank you. There are very appreciative of the people who came to make comments tonight, and I really take it to heart what everybody said. And I want to share the experience that it is incredibly muzzling to sit here on this side of the meeting and take in comments and not be able to respond because I feel the lack of conversation. I feel the lack of discourse, and I feel the pain of that, and I feel the loss of that as a community. So here's a perfect example where we are living up to the letter of the law by looking at the clock and making sure that we've got a 50%, whatever the rule is, I can't remember, of public comment and committee speaking time. And the fact that I want there to be more of an engaged conversation does not mean that I am against the letter of the law that says we should make sure there is equivalent time for the public comment. It is incredibly challenging to figure out how to mandate or unmandate that. And that has been one of our most profound challenges as a committee in my experience. I'm speaking for myself, not speaking for my good colleagues here. There are things that this little bucket that we have called a charter review can catch, and there are things that it can't. The things that it could catch were the things that ended up as those 18 recommendations. We spent a lot of time discussing what people suggested for their feasibility, for their ability to be handed over to a council to give an up or down vote based on another frame which we have, which is Massachusetts state law and other kinds of things that are passed on to charter commission level. We chose to not let those things that fall out of the bucket just lie on the ground. So that's what you see in an addendum. I wish that we were an entity that was empowered to give more than a strongly worded list to council to respond to on the issues of transparency, responsiveness, government efficiency, fixing the problem of public comment and how ineffective it is. We are not. We can make strongly worded recommendations and we can give it to council to take it up and urge them to respond and not to stick with the black letter of the law recommendations, which you see in items 1 through 18. I am hopeful that we can emphasize that here to you, to the public, in our report and in our meetings with council coming up in January. There are many things about this process that have been incredibly engaging. There are many things that have been really frustrating. One of the things that's been the biggest challenge is translating everything that we hear into an effective shape as a report. It's a very unwieldy thing. And sometimes we can put things into legal language and sometimes we can't. There's, you could revise the Constitution and also revise the laws and the codes that people live by. And there are some things that fall in between. And sometimes this is, again, my perspective, that the practices of good government are the things that fall in between because they're sometimes common sense, sometimes sort of, ethical standards that we want to set. And sometimes you have to write those into law. We find ourselves in a lot of gray areas sometimes. And so I'm not trying to reply defensively to anything anyone has said. I'm just trying to state some values that I think have stayed with me through this whole process. We're just all residents of Amherst, right? We are, neighbors and coming from a completely different line of work and position in this town with something to say about, we didn't come to do this because we thought everything was working great and status quo is the best way out. We came because we felt like there were some things to work on. And I think we all will be a little bit satisfied and a little bit dissatisfied with what we come out with. And I'm saying this all kind of in appreciation of the satisfaction, dissatisfaction that I hear in all the comments. I have more to say on the addendum. I'm going to stop because I want other people to speak. But I just wanted to really say that it's just hard to sit and take in and not be able to respond. Thank you.
I completely agree. Thank you, Erica. That was well put. And I'm in the same boat here where a lot of folks are asking good questions. Some questions that I think we could give a satisfying answer, others we couldn't. But it's too bad that we don't have more time to sit here and respond. What is our time looking like, Athena, before I call on Meg again?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. Andy, go
Andy had
ahead.
his hand up first.
Yeah.
Or not, I don't know, but it hasn't spoken.
Yeah, I've sat behind tables at meetings and had people make public comment, and it's extremely frustrating not to be able to interact. And I think part of that is because of open meeting law, where if you're going to discuss something at a public meeting, you have to post it in advance and have an agenda so people know what's going to be discussed. So if somebody comes in and makes a public comment about something that's not on the agenda, then if you start a discussion about that, then you haven't given everybody in the town an opportunity to know that that's going to be the discussion. And so you're in violation of open meeting law. So it's frustrating from both sides of the table. One thing we did try to do is encourage the council and the town to make clear the variety of ways people have for interacting with their representatives and for being heard and for participating. And so public comment may be one of the more frustrating ones. It's one of the more immediate ways, but it's also frustrating. But so we're trying to encourage folks to have some sort of protocol for how and when you can participate and make your voice heard in various decisions, whether it's budgets or whether it's getting something on the council agenda or calling a public meeting or whatever. So I think it would be helpful for the town to be clearer on the variety of ways that people can be heard. So we're not just putting all this emphasis on public comment, which is frustrating for everybody.
Thank you. Bernie, we have 3 minutes.
You can take longer than 3 minutes, but then you
Okay.
just need to give
Yep.
more time for public comment.
What Andy pointed out, I think, was a case where transparency gets in the way of the kind of spontaneous discussion that you'd like to have, because you have to post those. You have to post what you're going to talk about. And the open meeting law doesn't require public comment. Amherst chose to put public comment into its practice and into its charter. So we're in some sort of way, we're actually ahead of the game. One of the things that people can do when we tried to, we expanded the number of meetings that counselors and will have in their districts. And we also entered a requirement to make the at-large counselors attend meetings in each of the districts on a rotating basis. So we're trying to give people some informal settings where they can have good discussions with folks who are decision makers. And trying to work your way around the formality of having a meeting because you're running a business versus the kind of dialogue and spontaneity that comes from public interaction is a tough thing to manage. But we're, as Erica pointed out, we tried. Can we try harder? Yep, we will.
Thank you, Bernie. I just wanted to welcome Ken. He's one of our members of the committee who has joined us. Just to save him the time, I'm just going to slide this over and say you can hear and be heard.
All right. Hello, thank you.
Excellent. Meg, and try to be quick.
I'll be very quick. I really appreciate everything Erica said and others subsequently. 2 quick things. In our report, I urge everybody to read the full report because a lot of what was requested is actually in there. We're going to have a section, I believe, that'll make recommendations about future charter review committees doing it differently. And I just repeat something I said earlier. I really hope folks will pay attention after January 5th when we disappear and have no agency whatsoever to implementing the things that you think are important. And I'm not sure quite how we all do that, but we are toast after January 5th.
Thank you. Adrian, I see your hand up. Would you like to make a comment?
Julian, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, you're here.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sorry for giving you the problems that I was having at my end, but I have heard you all this evening, and I want to thank the committee for allowing this public forum, including taking the extensive comments that you heard tonight. I won't take your time to repeat all of those that I absolutely am in accordance with. I want you to know that I've already had my chance to speak both to your group as well as being a member of the League of Women Voters Task Force. So I won't repeat our recommendations there, but I will say that I get the sense of the most important aspect of your duties has been one that hasn't been commented on. And that is, I believe, your honest attempt to bring the charter to be less remote to the participants, the residents of Amherst. The charter that we're dealing with now feels very remote. It feels as if the citizens, residents of the town are sitting off on the side while we watch town government doing its thing. You've heard a lot of the comments tonight to change that. And I know your report. I've read your report and I have followed your proceedings. So I want to really thank you for attempting to bring a charter, a renewed charter back into the hands of the people of the town of Amherst, whether it's through public participation, whether it's through the changes between the legislative and the executive branches and making it a more viable document, whether it's regarding greater transparency. I've listened and watched you bring this closer to us as residents, and for that I thank you. And I do also appreciate that you'll continue to hear our voices until you do sunset. So before you sunset, thank you for your work. Thank you for taking the League of Women Voters study, which we took very seriously, into consideration, as well as the public comments tonight. And my apologies for giving you such a problem tonight trying to get on to make these comments. I will now lower my hand.
Thank you, Adrian. We're glad you could join us. No worries. Anita.
Hello again. I'll try not to sound quite as cranky as I did before. I think what Adrian just said about making the charter less remote is an important one. And I am thinking about what Rainey said about it being difficult to understand. And it is. It's dense legal language, and except for the few of us who have some facility in that language, it is awfully hard to negotiate. And I think a lot of the technical changes that you suggested are good ones. But I wonder if in the course of the last handful of meetings, 1 or 2 meetings that you have left, is there a way of at least instigating how to make it more understandable, first in English? Is there a way of summarizing it in, human being language? But also it goes back to the point of translation. And no matter how understandable it might be in English, it still excludes a good portion of our population. So I'm wondering why issues of translation did not get raised in the course of your discussion, or why it couldn't be put into the charter itself, or at least strongly urged to be taken up by the town. As far as public comment, and I don't want to belabor this, but every time this subject comes up, at least one person, as tonight, will say, well, it's because open meeting law requires things, topics to be posted. But in my experience and in my observation of many committees and town council, more often than not, the comments have to do with posted topics. So needing to shy away from any kind of discourse around posted topics seems somewhat disingenuous to me. Also, I've mentioned this a couple of times to some of you. I read things. I read rules. In my past life as a lawyer, I used to write rules and policies. So I'm kind of a geek when it comes to those things. So the rules of procedure for the town council includes not only public forum and public meeting, but also public dialogue, which was intended to be discourse. And I question why that was not picked up and discussed and perhaps even incorporated as a recommendation into the charter itself. So I think all of the comments around transparency and accuracy are really at the heart of what the charter and what town governance should be doing. And I hope in this last gasp of your committee that a few more things can be added in to enhance that.
Thank you, Anita. Adrian, I'm presuming your hand's up from before, but if you'd like to jump back in, you're welcome to. Okay, it looks like you took your hand down, so thank you. And I was just going to say I do have an answer to the translation question, so we at one point as a committee, it was a split vote, but we voted against adding it to the charter. Athena did point out that the town has pocket translators available upon request. It is not well advertised, shall I say, but we do have them. Athena, do you have one here?
I don't have one
Okay.
on my person.
Because I was thinking if there's any way that we can get the word out about it, it will be helpful to the community if folks know through like an Instagram post or whatever. So that's the answer to that question. Other comments? Raise your hand before we adjourn. No? Okay. I just wanted to inform everyone that we do have a meeting tomorrow Thursday. Thank you, Andy. Thursday, the 18th at 6 o'clock, where we will discuss many of the issues raised in this forum. There's also a public comment opportunity at that meeting. And we would encourage you, if you have additional comments or want to see the outcome of our discussion, please join us at that meeting on Zoom at 6 o'clock on the 18th. And we have another meeting scheduled on the 29th. Thank you, Meg. Also at 6 o'clock on Zoom, which you can join us and offer public comment, where we will be approving the final report. Other comments, please raise your hand from attendees or the committee.
I just think we need to, again, thank everyone for taking their time to come here and offer some pretty genuine and heartfelt comments about what we've been doing. It would be wonderful to be able to sit down and over coffee and have an extended discussion about this, but that hasn't happened and it's not likely to in the next 2 weeks. So, but thank you for being here.
I completely agree with that statement, Bernie, and echo that. I will just say many of you in the attendees already have my email, if anyone would like to set up a time, I'll go out on a limb and say my email is number1jrhynes@gmail.com. And if you'd like to set up a time to meet with me or talk to me over coffee or something like that, I'm open to that sort of discussion, and would invite it. So it might take a little while to get a response, but I'm happy to meet with anyone who would like to meet with me. And thank you for all of your feedback tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn on the committee?
Raphael had his hand up. I don't know if he still
Raphael,
wants to
sorry,
comment.
I missed
Yeah, I
you.
was just going to say thank you for the folks who attended and who continue to share their thoughts about this process and make recommendations. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you. Is there a chat room, Athena?
No.
Okay, thanks. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Great. Bernie made, Ken seconded. I'll start on Zoom since I started the opposite way before. Erica?
Yes.
Raphael?
Yes.
Ken?
Aye.
Myself, I'm an I. Thank you, sir. Have a nice day. Bernie? Andy?
Yes.
Meg? Marcus?
Yes.
All right. Have a great night, everybody, and thank you for
Good
coming
night,
out.
folks. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.